22 minutes after 1 o'clock. Tony says, I've recently become aware of Agenda 2030, which all United Nations signed up to back in 2015. And this really starts to explain the push for all this net zero to be done by that year, as well as the attack on farming. With the end goal being a single world government that controls everything that affects our lives. To be fair, I don't think the United Nations quite say that, but that is certainly, Tony is correct, that is the theory. They've always had, they do one like every decade. There was an Agenda 2010. That's not the official, it's called Sustainable Development Goals. So they have them all the time. But this one is being accelerated with some level of urgency by Ed Miliband. But China clearly aren't going to... they've said, no, we can't do it by 2030. We're already moving our goals in this country about petrol and diesel cars. The list goes on. We've got Harrison Allman-Varty with us, Conservative Borough Councillor. We're looking at the big stories of the day. Let's move on, Harrison, to house building. This is another area that could be a big old weak point for the government. Labour's house building plan seeks to deliver 1.5 million new homes by 2020, well, not by 2023, I think by within this government is the idea. Amid growing scepticism, Starmer has emphasised prioritising humans having a house over environmental concerns. Have a listen to the Prime Minister.
It will be locally led, so local plans are the first stop. If a local plan does the job, then there's no need for any intervention at all. If there is intervention, then it'll be brownfield first, grey site next, and green belt last. But we are determined to push on and build the homes that so many people watching this and listening to this will say, I'd like to be able to tell a similar story to Cassie about where I live, security and the base camp for my family. We intend to make that dream come true.
There it is. So he's willing to build over the green stuff in order to build homes. I mean, in that respect, it's very antitheses of an Ed Miliband kind of approach, you might say, Harrison. But regardless of motivation, can they build 1.5 million homes in the next 4.5 years?
No. And the reason why they can't, I went to the Surrey Development Forum, which is as exciting as it sounds, and I asked... I put a question in multiple times and they had to pick them and all that sort of stuff. And the question I asked is, we're talking about house building, right? The area that I represent, Elmbridge, our housing target is increased by 121%, right? Which is crazy. So the onus is now on us to find this extra room and grey belt, which is very vague, by the way. And I put the question in, on, and I said, we're always talking about supply and we never talk about demand. How can we anticipate how many homes to build when we don't know how many people come into this country?
Correct.
Now, when you have net immigration of nearly 1 million, right? That's wiped off your effort of building.
Correct. I mean, that answers the question there and then, doesn't it? I mean, more or less, that answers the question. And just to throw in, Harrison, sorry to cut across.
No worries.
Yesterday, we had a record amount of migrants for the winter arriving in a single day. 609 illegals in a single day. And at this time of the year, wintry day, chilly day in December, that hasn't happened before. So these people have got to have somewhere to live as well.
Yeah, I mean... Sure, I mean, Labour talk a good game on the hotels about ending them, but it was a massive, massive mistake by this government to put them in hotels by the last government, at a massive cost, right? Yeah. But where do they think they're going to go? You know, they're on, and FYI, spoiler alert to everybody watching, they're on your housing shortlist, and they're probably ahead of the residents who live been there their whole lives.
Well, that's absolutely what people are speculating here, is that, you know, if you bring 50,000 people a year into your country on small boats. That doesn't include the 1 million that you just referenced, Harrison, that are here legally. They've been rubber stamped by the government and the previous government. We know that as well. If you do that, then somewhere along the line you think, well, where are all these houses going to go? I mean, clearly a big percentage of them, possibly even all of them, are going to go to people who came here from elsewhere.
Yeah. Now, if they wanted to do this, right, and if I were to kind of consult with them as someone who sits on planning committees, I would say you need to target your major cities first of all, right? Areas like London, its density per kilometre is much lower than other areas, major cities like, especially those in Asia, right? So build up more is a good start, right? Other things is, if you want to do this, you need to scrap unnecessary kind of requirements on developers, right? Yeah. These are BNG credits. Now, I don't know if any of your viewers know what they are, but basically, BNG stands for Biodiversity Net Gain, and it came in actually by the last government as well, which I hate to say, which basically means that if a developer's building, before they had to leave the biodiversity of that area in at 0, so exactly the same state they found it, but now it has to be 10% higher than how they found it. Now, if they can't do that on that plot, then they have to buy credits through the council, and they will plant some trees on their behalf, in a nutshell, right? Now, I guess makes sense in very, very built-up areas, sure, which limited green spaces. But when you go out to the countryside, it's madness, right? When you go out to leafy Surrey, which is where we are, where we do have good biodiversity, right? I get the whole making it the same as you found it, but 10% net gain is unbelievable, and it's very expensive. Developers already pay quite a lot, you know, Section 106, which is your affordable housing contributions, community infrastructure levy payments. It's quite a lot. So if they wanted to really encourage it, they would drop a few those restrictions of biodiversity in the right areas, I might add, because some areas would benefit from it.
Indeed.
And also, finally, it's people like your Liberal Democrats, right? Liberal Democrats are the chief objectors, really, if you like it, in local government. They love saying no, and that actually harms your local authority, right? Now, I'm very open-minded to development, right? But when you have an authority which is very Lib Dem, right, and says no to a lot of things, what will happen is the government will go, right, they're saying no to everything. We'll strip you of your powers, right, and we'll give it to a planning officer in Bristol or whatever, and that's it, you're done. And now everything will be yes. So this is where it's really...
Well, you can't trust a Lib Dem. I mean, that's the only thing we need to keep in mind, isn't it? I mean, that's been the case, I'd like to think, for most of time and should continue to be so. Harrison, we've not got long on this, just 45 seconds or so to respond. UK economy plunging for the second consecutive month. Public confidence has fallen even further despite Rachel Reeves' pledge for growth, yet she still insists she is a woman with a plan. Have a listen.
The numbers on GDP are disappointing, but it's not possible to turn around more than a decade of poor economic growth and stagnant living standards in just a few months. But you'll see from the plans we've been announcing, whether that is the energy reforms we've published today, the reforms to build 1.5 million homes that we published yesterday, the pensions reforms, the creation of a national wealth fund, this government are getting on with the job in improving economic growth and driving up living standards.
Am I the only person that every time I see her, it looks like Ed Miliband in a dress and sounds a little bit like him as well, Harrison? Maybe it's just me. Listen, this is not good news for the government. The UK economy contracting by 0.1% in October. This was the party that was going to come in all guns blazing and make things instantly better.
Now, I'm not an economist, although I'm not so sure that she is either. But no, she could have had some easy wins here, right? The easy wins would be, first of all, talk up the economy, which I think the last government were quite good at doing, highlighting what's good at. You know, also you've scared off investment by saying that we might hurt you in the budget, but we're not going to tell you how you're going to hurt you. Massive red flag to any major investor. And the final one was interest rates. We were on a quite nice glide slope of having those puppies cut, but now that the inflation is kind of peeking its head a little bit, thanks to those bumper pay rises, everybody will have to wait a little bit longer for those cuts to come, and the fallout of that will be, yes, not as impressive growth, or in this case, decline.
Indeed. Harrison, thank you as ever. Harrison Allman-Varty. Have a cracking weekend, Harrison. Conservative Borough Council, the youngest Tory councillor in the entire country.